The sauna door hissed shut, trapping me in a haze of cedar-scented heat and the weight of a gaze I couldn't shake. I was 28, freshly out of a dead-end job, sitting on a wooden bench in nothing but a towel, when Marcus, my best friend's dad, looked at me like he saw something no one else ever had. That look changed everything. My name's Eli Carter, and I'd known Marcus Reyes for half my life. He was the kind of man who filled a room without trying, broad shoulders, salt and pepper hair, and eyes that could pin you down or set you free, depending on his mood. At 47, he was a single dad, a firefighter who'd seen too much, and the one person I never expected to unravel me. Growing up in San Diego, I'd spent countless summers at his house, crashing on the couch after late-night video game marathons with his son, Jamie. Marcus was always there, steady and untouchable, like a lighthouse you admire but never get close to, until that night in the sauna at the community gym. It was late July, the kind of sticky evening where the California air clung to your skin. Jamie had dragged me to the gym, part of his latest obsession with getting ripped. I wasn't complaining. Unemployment gave me too much time to think, and the gym was a distraction from the mess of my life. My last relationship had crashed and burned 6 months ago, leaving me questioning if I'd ever figure out who I was supposed to be. Jamie, 28 like me, was my anchor, loud, loyal, and blissfully unaware of the storm brewing inside me. The sauna was supposed to be a quick stop before we headed out for tacos. Jamie had bailed early, saying he needed a shower, leaving me alone with the heat and my thoughts. Then Marcus walked in. He wasn't supposed to be there. He'd been on a 48-hour shift at the fire station. But there he was, towel slung low around his hips, his chest glistening with sweat. "Eli," he said, voice low, like he was testing the weight of my name. I nodded, suddenly aware of how small the sauna felt. "You okay?" he asked, sitting across from me. His eyes weren't just looking, they were searching. I mumbled something about the heat, but my voice cracked, betraying me. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the air shifted. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Not your usual self." I wanted to laugh it off, to say I was fine, but the truth clawed its way up. I wasn't fine. I was lost, adrift in a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. I don't know why I told him. Maybe it was the heat loosening my defenses, or maybe it was the way he looked at me, like he actually cared. I spilled it all. The breakup, the job loss, the fear that I'd never be enough for anyone, least of all myself. Marcus listened, his face unreadable but his eyes soft. When I finished, he didn't offer platitudes. Instead, he said, "You're stronger than you think, Eli. You just haven't seen it yet." Then he did something I'll never forget. He reached out, his hand brushing mine, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through me like lightning. It wasn't just the contact, it was the intention behind it. His fingers lingered a second too long, and when he pulled back, his eyes held mine, raw and unguarded. "You're not alone," he said, voice barely above a whisper. The sauna felt like it was burning, but it wasn't the heat. It was him. I left the gym that night with my heart pounding, replaying that moment over and over. Marcus hadn't said much after, just grabbed his towel and left with a quiet, "See you around." But something had shifted, like a fault line cracking open. I couldn't stop thinking about him, his voice, his touch, the way he saw me. It was terrifying and exhilarating, like standing on the edge of a cliff. The next week was torture. Jamie invited me over for a barbecue at their house in Ocean Beach, a cozy craftsman with a backyard that smelled of jasmine and charcoal. Marcus was there, flipping burgers, laughing with neighbors, acting like nothing had happened. But every time our eyes met, I felt it, the heat, the pull, the unspoken question hanging between us. I tried to focus on Jamie's stories about his new job at a tech startup, but my mind kept drifting to Marcus. Was I imagining it? Had I misread that moment in the sauna? Or was there something real, something neither of us was ready to name? By the time the barbecue ended, I was a mess of nerves. I offered to help clean up, hoping for a moment alone with Marcus. Jamie, oblivious as ever, waved me off and headed inside to call his girlfriend. The backyard was quiet now, just me and Marcus stacking plates under the string lights. "You're awfully quiet tonight," he said, echoing his words from the sauna. I forced a smile, but my hands were shaking. "Just thinking," I said, which was the understatement of the century. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the smoke on his shirt and the faint cedar from his cologne. "About what?" he asked, his voice low, almost daring me to say it. I wanted to tell him everything. How his touch had set me on fire, how I couldn't stop wondering what it meant. But fear clamped down hard. He was Jamie's dad. He was 19 years older than me. He was a man who'd lived through things I couldn't imagine. Fires, loss, raising a kid alone. What was I to him? Just a kid with a crush? Or something more? "Eli," he said, and the way he said my name made my chest ache. "Whatever you're thinking, you don't have to carry it alone." His hand brushed my arm again, deliberate this time, and I swear I stopped breathing. The backyard felt like a bubble, the world outside fading away. I wanted to lean into him to close the distance, but the weight of everything, Jamie, our history, my own doubts, held me back. That night, I lay awake in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of that touch, that look. I was falling for Marcus, and it scared the hell out of me. Not because he was a man. I'd known I was gay since I was 15, but because he was him, my best friend's dad. The one person I shouldn't want. But the heat from that sauna, from his hand on mine, wouldn't let me go. And deep down, I didn't want it to. The days after the barbecue blurred into a haze of longing and confusion. I couldn't shake Marcus from my mind. His steady gaze, the roughness of his voice, the way his touch lingered like a bruise I didn't want to heal. I was 28, old enough to know better, but young enough to let my heart run wild. San Diego's summer pressed on, relentless and golden. I spent my days job hunting, sending resumes into the void, but my nights were consumed by thoughts of Marcus. I'd see him in flashes, the way his firefighter's jacket hung on the hook by his front door, the crinkle of his eyes when he laughed, the quiet strength in his hands. I told myself it was nothing, a fleeting spark that would burn out if I ignored it. But every time I saw him, the spark flared hotter. Jamie, bless his clueless heart, kept pulling me into his orbit. He invited me to a beach bonfire in La Jolla, a casual night with his coworkers from the tech startup. I almost said no, afraid Marcus might show up, but Jamie insisted. "Come on, Eli, you need to get out of your head," he said, tossing me a beer from his fridge. I couldn't argue with that. The bonfire was alive with laughter and music, the ocean roaring in the dark. I was nursing a drink, half listening to Jamie's coworker drone on about blockchain, when Marcus arrived. He stepped into the firelight, wearing a faded flannel and jeans, looking every bit the rugged hero I couldn't stop dreaming about. My heart lurched. He wasn't supposed to be here. Jamie had said he was working. But there he was, greeting people with that easy charm, his eyes finding mine across the flames. I tried to play it cool, but my hands betrayed me, fidgeting with the label on my bottle. Marcus made his way over, casual but deliberate, like a predator who knew his prey wasn't going anywhere. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, his voice warm but edged with something deeper. I shrugged, mumbling something about Jamie dragging me along. He smiled, and it was like the firelight dimmed in comparison. We ended up sitting on a driftwood log, a little apart from the group. The conversation started safe: work, the Padres' latest game, the way the ocean smelled like freedom. But then he asked, "You ever feel like you're running from something, Eli?" His tone was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the waves. I froze, caught off guard. "All the time," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "Feels like I'm running from myself." He nodded, like he understood more than I'd said. "I've been there," he said. "After Jamie's mom left, I spent years running. From grief, from who I was. Took me a long time to stop." His words hit me hard, peeling back layers I didn't want to face. Marcus wasn't just Jamie's dad anymore. He was a man with scars, with a past that shaped the steady strength I admired. The fire crackled, and the group's laughter faded into the background. He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine, and I felt that same jolt from the sauna. "You don't have to run forever," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. There it was again, that look, like he saw parts of me I hadn't dared to show anyone. My breath caught, and for a moment, I thought he might close the distance, might say something that would shatter the fragile line between us. But then Jamie's voice broke through, calling Marcus over to settle a bet about some old firefighting story. Marcus stood, his hand grazing my knee as he did, and I swear the touch burned through me. "We'll talk later," he said, and I nodded, too shaken to speak. The rest of the night passed in a blur, but I couldn't stop watching him. How he moved, how he laughed, how he seemed to carry the weight of the world without breaking. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and a heart full of questions. I needed to talk to someone, but Jamie was out of the question. He'd never understand, and worse, he'd hate me for even thinking about his dad that way. So I called Lena, my old college friend who'd always been my sounding board. We met at a coffee shop in North Park, a cozy spot with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. Lena, 29 and fiercely perceptive, took one look at me and said, "Spill it, Eli. You look like you're about to combust." I told her everything, the sauna, the barbecue, the bonfire. Her eyes widened, but she didn't judge. "Okay, so you're falling for your best friend's dad," she said, stirring her latte. "That's complicated. But the way you talk about him, it's not just a crush. You're in deep." I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "What do I do, Lena? He's Jamie's dad. He's 47. This is a disaster." She leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You can't choose who you fall for, Eli, but you can choose what you do about it. If this is real, you need to figure out what it means. For you, for him, for Jamie. But don't run from it. You've been running long enough." Her words echoed Marcus's, and they hit me like a punch to the gut. That night, I got a text from Marcus. "Meet me at the pier tomorrow, 7 p.m. Just you and me." My heart stopped. The Ocean Beach Pier was a place we'd gone as kids, a place full of memories. Why there? Why now? I typed back a quick okay, my hands trembling. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew one thing. I was done running. The Ocean Beach Pier stretched out into the Pacific like a dare, its weathered boards creaking under my feet as I waited for Marcus. The sunset painted the sky in shades of fire, orange, pink, and gold, and I felt like I was standing on the edge of something bigger than myself. At 28, I'd never been more terrified or more alive. Marcus arrived right at 7, his silhouette sharp against the fading light. He was in a navy jacket and jeans, his hair catching the breeze. "Eli," he said, his voice softer than I expected. "Thanks for coming." I nodded, my throat tight. The pier was quiet, just a few fishermen and couples strolling, giving us space to exist in our own fragile bubble. We walked to the end of the pier, where the ocean stretched endless and wild. He leaned against the railing, his hands gripping the wood like he needed an anchor. "I haven't stopped thinking about you," he said, and the words hit me like a wave. That night in the sauna I crossed a line. I shouldn't have, but I don't regret it. His honesty was a blade, sharp and clean, cutting through my doubts. I wanted to tell him I felt the same, that his touch had rewritten something inside me. But fear clawed at me, fear of Jamie, of the age gap, of what this could mean. "Marcus, you're Jamie's dad," I said, my voice shaking. It's not simple." He turned to me, his eyes fierce but tender. "Nothing worth having is simple, Eli. You think I don't know what this could cost? Jamie's my world. But you," he paused, his jaw tight. "You make me feel things I thought I'd buried." His words broke something open in me. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth of his breath. "What are we doing, Marcus?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek, and time stopped. "We're figuring it out," he said. Then he kissed me. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It was hungry, desperate, like he'd been holding back for years. I kissed him back, my hands finding his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. The ocean roared below us, but all I could hear was the rush of my own blood. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, and I saw the storm in his eyes. Want, fear, hope, all tangled together. "We can't tell Jamie," he said, his voice rough. "Not yet." I nodded, knowing he was right but hating it. Jamie was my best friend, the one who'd been there through every heartbreak and triumph. The thought of hurting him twisted my gut, but the thought of letting Marcus go hurt more. We stayed on the pier until the sky darkened, talking about everything and nothing. His years as a firefighter, my dreams of finding a purpose, the way we both felt like we were breaking rules we didn't fully understand. He told me about his ex-wife, how her leaving had shattered him, how he'd sworn off love to protect Jamie. "But you," he said, his voice low, "you make me want to try again." When we parted that night, he squeezed my hand, a silent promise. I walked home under the stars, my heart a mess of joy and dread. I was falling for Marcus Reyes, and there was no going back. The next few weeks were a tightrope walk. Marcus and I stole moments when we could. A coffee here, a late-night walk there, each one electric with possibility. But Jamie was always there, a shadow over us. He started noticing my distraction, joking that I must be in love or something. I laughed it off, but the guilt gnawed at me. Marcus felt it too. I could see it in the way his smile faltered when Jamie called, in the way he'd pull back just when I thought we were getting closer. Then came the night that changed everything. Jamie invited me to a family dinner at their house, a tradition we'd had since high school. Marcus was there, cooking his famous chili, acting like the perfect dad. But under the table, his knee brushed mine, a secret tether that made my pulse race. After dinner, Jamie got a call from work and stepped outside, leaving me and Marcus alone in the kitchen. The air was thick with tension. Marcus leaned against the counter, his eyes locked on mine. "I can't keep doing this," he said, his voice raw. "Pretending I don't want you." Before I could respond, he crossed the room and kissed me, hard and urgent, like he was afraid we'd run out of time. I melted into him, my hands gripping his shirt, lost in the heat of it. Then the back door slammed. We sprang apart, but it was too late. Jamie stood there, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. "What the hell?" he whispered, his voice breaking. My heart sank. The man I loved and the friend I couldn't lose were staring at each other, and I was the wedge between them. Jamie's eyes burned with a mix of hurt and fury, pinning me and Marcus in place. The kitchen, once warm with the smell of chili, felt like a battlefield. At 28, I'd never felt so small, caught between the man I loved and the friend I'd betrayed. "Jamie," Marcus started, his voice steady but laced with pain. "Let me explain." Jamie shook his head, his fists clenched. "Explain what? That you're sneaking around with my best friend? How long, Dad? How long have you been lying to me?" His words cut deep, and I wanted to disappear, to take back every stolen moment with Marcus. But I couldn't. I didn't want to. "It's not what you think," I said, my voice shaking. Jamie turned on me, his eyes blazing. "Not what I think. I saw you, Eli. You're my brother, man. How could you?" The word brother hit like a punch. Jamie had been my family when mine fell apart, when my parents kicked me out at 17 for being gay. He'd given me a home, a place to belong, and now I'd broken that. Marcus stepped forward, his hand raised like he could calm the storm. "This is on me, Jamie. I started it. Yell at me, not him." But Jamie wasn't listening. He stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked at me, his face etched with guilt. "I'm sorry, Eli," he said. "I should have handled this better." I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that we'd both walked into this fire, but the words wouldn't come. I left the house that night, my heart in pieces. Jamie wouldn't answer my calls or texts. I wandered the streets of Ocean Beach, the neon signs of bars and taco shops blurring through my tears. I ended up at the pier again, staring at the ocean, replaying that kiss with Marcus, the one that had felt like a beginning but now seemed like an end. The next day, I went to Lena's apartment, desperate for advice. She listened as I poured out the mess. Jamie's anger, Marcus's guilt, my own fear that I'd lost them both. "You can't fix this overnight," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Jamie's hurt and he has a right to be. But you and Marcus, if it's real, you have to fight for it. And you have to give Jamie time." I nodded, but time felt like a luxury I didn't have. Marcus called me that afternoon, his voice heavy. "Jamie's staying with a friend," he said. "He won't talk to me." I could hear the strain in his words, the weight of being a father who'd let his son down. "We need to give him space," he said, but I could tell he was breaking too. "What about us?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. There was a long pause. "I don't know, Eli," he said. "I want you, but I can't lose my son." His words were a knife, twisting in my chest. I spent the next week in a fog, barely eating, barely sleeping. I applied for jobs, went through the motions, but my mind was stuck on Marcus and Jamie. I kept seeing Marcus's face, the way he'd looked at me on the pier, like I was worth risking everything for. And Jamie's face, the betrayal in his eyes. I didn't know how to fix it or if I even could. Then Jamie texted me, "Meet me at the beach, noon." My heart leapt, but I was terrified. I arrived at the La Jolla Cove, where the waves crashed against jagged rocks. Jamie was there, sitting on a blanket, staring at the horizon. He looked tired, his usual energy dimmed. "I'm not okay with this," he said when I sat down, his voice flat. "But I need to understand. Why him? Why my dad?" I took a deep breath, the truth spilling out. I told him about the sauna, the bonfire, the pier, how Marcus saw me in a way no one else ever had, how he made me feel alive. "I didn't mean to hurt you," I said, my voice cracking. "You're my family, Jamie. But I love him." The word love hung between us, heavy and real. Jamie looked away, his jaw tight, but he didn't leave. "I don't get it," he said finally. "He's my dad, Eli. It's weird. And it hurts." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. "I know. I'm sorry." We sat in silence, the waves filling the space between us. Then he said, "I need time, but I don't want to lose you either." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. That night, I met Marcus at a diner in Hillcrest, a place where rainbow flags hung proudly outside. He looked worn, his eyes shadowed, but when he saw me, he smiled. A small, fragile thing. "Jamie talked to me," he said. "He's not ready to accept this, but he's trying." Relief flooded me, but it was tempered by the weight of what came next. "What do we do now?" I asked. Marcus reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "We take it one day at a time," he said. "Together." His touch was a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. I squeezed his hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt hope. The months that followed were a delicate dance of healing and hope. Marcus and I moved slowly, building something real amidst the wreckage of what we'd broken. At 28, I was learning what it meant to love someone fully, flaws and all. While at 47, Marcus was rediscovering a part of himself he'd long buried. Jamie didn't come around right away. He kept his distance, but he didn't shut me out completely. We'd meet for coffee or a quick walk, talking about anything but Marcus. It was progress, fragile but real. I hated the space between us, but I held on to his words from the beach. "I don't want to lose you either." It gave me hope that we could rebuild. Marcus and I found our rhythm in stolen moments. A hike in Torrey Pines, a quiet dinner at his place when Jamie was out, a kiss under the stars that felt like a promise. He opened up about his life, how he'd come out as bisexual after his divorce, how he'd kept it quiet to protect Jamie, how meeting me had forced him to face his fears. "You make me want to be brave," he told me one night, his voice thick with emotion. I kissed him, my heart full, knowing I felt the same. But love doesn't erase consequences. The fire station where Marcus worked wasn't exactly a bastion of acceptance. Whispers started, nothing overt, but enough to make him tense when he talked about work. "They'll come around," he said, but I saw the worry in his eyes. I wanted to protect him, to shield him the way he'd shielded me, but all I could do was be there. One evening, Marcus invited me to a fundraiser at the station, a community event with food trucks and live music. I hesitated, knowing it meant going public, at least in some small way. But Marcus insisted. "I'm tired of hiding," he said. "I want them to see us." So I went, my heart pounding as we walked in together, his hand brushing mine. Some of his colleagues stared, others smiled, and one, a grizzled veteran named Tom, clapped Marcus on the shoulder and said, "About time you looked happy, Reyes." It wasn't approval from everyone, but it was enough. The real test came when Jamie showed up unexpectedly. He stood at the edge of the crowd, watching us. I braced myself for anger, but he just nodded, a small gesture that felt like a truce. Later, he pulled me aside. "I'm not there yet," he said, his voice low. "But I see how you look at him, and how he looks at you. It's real." Tears pricked my eyes, and I hugged him, something we hadn't done since the fight. "Thanks, Jamie," I whispered. He hugged me back, and for the first time, I felt like we might be okay. That night, Marcus and I walked to the beach, the same one where I'd imagined that driftwood carving in my mind. The sunset was just as vibrant, the waves just as wild. He took my hand, his grip firm and sure. "I love you, Eli," he said. The words simple but heavy with everything we'd been through. I smiled, my chest tight with joy. "I love you too." We stood there, the ocean stretching before us, and I thought about the sauna, the pier, the kitchen, every moment that had led us here. It wasn't perfect. Jamie was still healing, and the world wasn't always kind. But we'd chosen each other, chosen love over fear, and that was enough. As the stars came out, Marcus pulled me close, his warmth grounding me. The heat from that first touch in the sauna still lingered, a reminder that some fires don't burn out, they just grow stronger. And as we walked back to his place, hand in hand, I knew we'd face whatever came next together, not running, but standing tall.